How's it going, Journey? We have a rainy day today, so our location has changed slightly from our usual backyard experience to a little more cozy and intimate here in our game room. Today we're going to be talking about chapters 5 and 6 in The 12 People You Love. Hopefully you've been reading along with that with us and been enjoying the videos that we've been putting up about it. And if you still, I think I have one extra copy of the book left.
Yes, you do.
I have one extra copy of the book left, so if anybody out there doesn't have one and wants one, first come, first serve. So hit me up, either text me or comment on the video, and if you don't have a copy of the book yet, please get one so you can go along with it with us. Last week we talked about who the 12 are and about how do we pick the 12 people we love. Now remember, this doesn't mean the only people we love. This just means the 12 people that we're going to be intentionally focusing on and strengthening our relationships with. For, I guess, the side purpose of bringing them closer to Jesus as well.
I think that's our thesis.
I think so, yeah. And then we're going to be moving on here to chapters 5 and 6, where basically, where Elder Ice says, okay, so you've picked your 12. Now what? And so that's what we want to do our discussion on today. So come along with us, of course, by all means. If you have any questions or any comments, please share with us on Facebook, and we'd love to have some interaction with you over this text.
All right. So our first chapter, chapter 5, is Now What Do I Do? That's the title of our chapter here. And this is one of my favorite things from these two chapters, actually, is that he starts off with the first thing that you do is pray for yourself. I thought that was really interesting.
It seems almost counterintuitive, right? But there's an important reason for that.
Yeah, so I like that's our first focus, is asking God to help you, to direct you, to keep doing the work that he's doing, that they're doing in you, right? To not make this about, oh God, please open their hearts to my brilliant, receptive words, but it's, oh God, make me receptive to them. Open my heart to you and to others. I really like that, because I think that should always be our focus in our relationships, is how can I be a better person, a better friend, a better part of this relationship with God and with people directly.
Like we said last time, sanctification and deconstruction and realizing the more problematic parts of our experience, especially if we come from a place of privilege, is a lifelong process. And so what I love that Elder Ice says here is that he says about the prayer thing is that pray that God will continue his transformative work within you. Not that, like, now that you've decided to love 12 people and stuff, you're all good to go and everything's, you're fine, or you're this bastion of I've got everything together. You're learning and growing still along the way. And I love how that part of that prayer is, hey, never make me complacent and never make me comfortable with where I'm at. Always give me that, as I like to say, that divine restlessness. That is there something more I can do? And so I really like how he says that and how we start this exercise with that sort of understanding.
Yeah, and I really liked that's our start with our prayer particularly, that's what we do. I always like when we talk about the Spirit and the Holy Spirit personally, with my past, spending a good portion of my formative years as a Pentecostal, that always calls to me in a special way.
Right.
Because so much of my foundational faith is about how we build that relationship with the Spirit and the Spirit working through us.
And evidence, don't be scared. The Holy Spirit is nothing to be scared
Strange fire.
The Spirit works and the Spirit works in our lives. And the Spirit, I think, helps us have these emotional connections with God and with each other. And so, yeah, I really like that too.
So the most of this chapter, it's just encouraging you to make contact.
Yeah, so the main thing is, like, what do I do first? It's, well, don't do nothing. I think is kind of the best way to sum it up, is start by contacting them.
Yeah, and it says that we've got some ideas in the back of our book that we'll be getting to pretty shortly here. Some specific things for how to do that.
Like texting, emailing, calling, that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
I like that it says here to schedule it on your calendar. I'm a big fan of calendars and organization.
I knew you were gonna like that part. I was like, because I was sitting there like, who schedules these things? Who says I'm gonna call the 12 people I
People
love?
that keep friendships. That's who.
People who keep friendships. That's who. And meanwhile, there's like, oh yeah, I haven't talked to that person in 5 years, and like, I'll call him tomorrow.
Yeah.
3 years later, yeah.
I actually have in my habit tracker now something that pops up twice a week that pops up on my phone, and it says call or text a friend. And it's a reminder for me to reach out to those people in my life that I love and that aren't part of my daily life. Because, I mean, you all know, as you get older and you change stations in life,
Oh, yeah.
physical locations,
Have kids.
your relationships change. And there are some relationships that you really want to hold on to, and it takes a real effort. And here, I like that that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to make an effort, put it in your calendar. Remind yourself to do it. We get so busy. I know right now it might not feel the same way. Although I swear
It's weird.
fewer hours and more hours in a day.
I simultaneously feel less busy and more busy, and I'm not quite sure how to take this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I went to the store today, and I'm like, oh, you know, and then I'm like, oh man, I've got to hurry up here because I got this and this and this and this to do, and I'm like, but I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, we were supposed to film this video yesterday. We've been trying to run a day ahead. It helps take the stress off. It gets up on time just in case I have technical issues, all that sort of thing. And then we have a home project we're doing, and the dogs got in the mud. Our 2 new dogs got in the mud, and so we had to stop and wash the dogs because then the dogs were cold and needed to come in, and it took forever.
And guess
the
what? They're
kids
muddy again.
were in mud. They are
They're
muddy
already
again.
muddy
So
again.
we're gonna go do that right after this. Clean the dogs, bring them back in. But then the day was gone. We didn't go anywhere. We didn't. You know, I mean, we did things. We're homeschooling
No, we didn't.
the kids.
Yeah, we didn't. But we didn't leave the house yesterday at all.
No, at all.
Because we're supposed to stay at home.
Stay at home. Stay home. But we're derailed there. But it is weird right now. Time feels extra strange. So somehow more and less hours in the day.
And I can't believe I'm saying this. I never thought I'd be in a place where I would say this, but this today especially, I was like, you know, the whole scheduling thing like makes a whole lot of sense.
Does it?
I know. You've only been saying this for 10 years of our marriage.
11.
11 years of our marriage. Even before we were married, you were saying this.
It's our 11th anniversary next month. 2 months.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
10
wow.
years was last year.
Oh wow.
I know we didn't get out to our 10-year thing, so it's 11 this year.
Yeah.
In a month and a half.
In the time of cholera. Nice. But yeah, but the point is, without being too derailing too much, but I think Cass is really onto something here. If you don't make a conscious effort to reach out to people, you often forget to. If you don't make a list of people and if you're praying for these people, you have a prayer list and you're praying for the 12 people you love, you're more likely to schedule that time to catch up with them, to reach out to them, to check in with them. And that's all you really need to do. I mean, as Elder Rice is saying, all you really need to do is say, hey, how's it going? Hey, thinking about you. And what are you up to right now? Hey, what are you doing in quarantine? You know? There's a lot of things.
Have you made no-sew masks yet?
I have.
Yeah.
And so I really like that idea though, where he's like, and I think that one of the most beautiful things about this is it's a baby step. It's small. It's actually something that we can all do. It's something that doesn't require a whole lot. It's something that I think that requires actually not a whole lot of effort, but it means a lot.
And that's the next thing in the next column there, right after his unsourced quote.
Right, hold on. I'm going to address this because this was, okay. Preach the gospel to all the world, and if necessary, use words. That is St. Francis of Assisi that said that. Now, I know, especially to certain audiences that we're marketing to with this. And Elder Rice, I totally get it, man. Totally get that you don't want people to, Catholic this and Catholic that. You don't want people freaking out about it, fine. But St. Francis of Assisi was a prolific theologian, and he was an important part of this church. I mean, he is one of the one of the people in the history of this church, the Christian church.
Yeah.
And so I would have had
It's such a beautiful legacy.
Yeah, a beautiful legacy, the Franciscan order has a lot of good things going on with it.
When I traveled in Italy, I got to go to Assisi and see St. Francis's Basilica, and you would love it. It was really the high point.
We'll have to see that sometime.
But most of the Italians that I met didn't identify as Catholic. They called themselves Franciscans.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, isn't that? And they're like, no, I'm Franciscan. Like, they're specifically because his theology is so warm and open and loving and.
Fool preached to animals for crying out.
I know. I went to that island.
Yeah, he preached to the animals, like because he thought that they needed Jesus too.
Yeah.
I'm like. That's why you see all this. All the people have like the little statues out in their yards and stuff.
And he has the birds and
it's because the fool preached Jesus to the birds and stuff.
Yeah.
Like he's so cool.
It's this beautiful island in the middle of this lake in Perugia, in the middle of Italy, that he went to preach the unity.
Yeah, he was a man of God and a theologian that happened to be Catholic. Was take that and move
there
on.
There weren't really any other options.
At that point, not really.
So,
like really, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a universal
default.
church. Yeah. So I get it though, but at the same time, it's just like the old famous quote. Yeah, well, just it's Francis, dude, or Francis of Assisi. Like, you don't even have to say the same part. It's Francis.
Well, I mean, and the professor part of me that really bothers me, not to source it, not to say where you got it from.
Yeah.
So that's but
does he like? I'm sorry, Elder Eyes. I hate to do this to you. I'm trying. Really, honestly, not trying to nitpick here. Like I said, we can talk about it over some coffee after this all blows over if you'd like. But I mean,
there's no sourcing. I already checked.
Oh, because there's no footnotes or endnotes or
No.
Okay. So just Francis of Assisi, guys. It preached to cause what all the world, if necessary, use words.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that goes back to my illustration of my friend from college last time, which again I thought of here. Because our very next line is, your actions of sincere care and concern are preaching. So we're moving back then to love, and again to our idea that we've been repeating throughout as we've been going through this, that love is how we do this.
Mm-hmm.
It is the doctrine, it is the truth. And so we're back to that again. That love, he says a loving lifestyle is a distinctive characteristic of Jesus' followers. Yep. And just that we have to keep that in mind, right? That's how we bring Jesus to people, is love, because that's what God is.
Yep.
So how else could you do it without that?
And I like how at the end he says, so think about how much you love them, think about the people you love, get a smile on your face and get going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to chapter 6, where how do I love my 3 family members? Mm-hmm. I like the fact that he acknowledges that for a lot of people, this seems like the easiest category. Seems like. But more often than not is actually probably, I would say, the most difficult category for a lot of people to deal with. Because he's like, he understands family dynamics, and he understands that even like if you have good relationships with your family, for some reason, preaching or teaching or discipling or having any sort of spiritual talk with your family members can be incredibly difficult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't have a lot of notes in this chapter. Adam knows what that face means. There's no women in this book. Sorry, it really became apparent to me in this rereading this chapter, because I've read ahead and then I go back and read for each one. It's very teacher of me, I know. So that I've gone through it twice, so that I've refreshed my view. I might be in a different mindset, help me see different things. There's no women. Particularly since he starts off talking about it's just a throwaway line. Jesus rescued a wedding by magically restocking the refreshments. And then he lent a hand on Sabbath by healing another man's withered hand. He produced dinner for more than 5,000 hungry men from a boy's lunchbox. The 12 previous are men. The brother is a man.
It says the brothers. Does he even say brothers and sisters?
Not here. There's one other place where he used brothers and sisters. But there's just men. There's just men.
Does he not mention Mary at all? Because
No!
the whole veneration of Mary thing?
No. There's no women.
I mean, the wedding at Cana was because his mom asked him
Because his mom
to.
asked him to.
It's like my favorite miracle in the Gospel of John, is like, other than the raising of Lazarus.
He healed women. He interacted with women. He had women who were his followers.
I mean, the whole story of Mary and Martha in Luke.
And they're not here. They're not here. They're deleted. And I think that's what bothers me the most, is that they're not just glossed over, they're removed.
Now that, again, as we want to preface with what we've said before, done intentionally or not, we won't begin to presume. However, it doesn't change the fact that it's been done.
Just his brothers. I mean, to other people, you might be thinking, oh, well, what does it matter? You know, Jesus meant you or whatever. Jesus did. You're right. Jesus included women.
Yeah.
Jesus discipled women. Jesus spoke to women as equals. The church deletes women.
Yeah.
Elders, pastors, writers, theologians spend their entire lives deleting women. And I'm real tired of it. I mean, when Adam was first ordained, when you first got your first job.
At Hudson Heights? Or
Yes,
yeah.
yes. When Adam got his first job as a pastor, a member of Adam's cohort reached out to me and told me that my ministry was now uplifting Adam. Like, he didn't know me. He didn't know what ministry I might have had, my interests, my abilities, nothing. But as soon as I was married to a man who was going into the ministry, I was deleted, and it was only Adam. And that's been my whole life. I mean, honestly, I could tell you so many stories, my life in the church, of women being removed, forgotten, pushed aside, just over and over. And it gets to the point where you can't overlook it anymore. And I don't want to overlook it anymore. And so rereading this chapter, again, the women were deleted. Sure, unintentionally.
But it doesn't change the fact.
But it doesn't change the fact
that they were.
That they were.
And it doesn't change, and it doesn't help that that this is, like, as Cass was saying, something that's happened throughout history.
Yeah.
And so for it to happen here in the 21st century by someone that I would like to think, I believe I know, is fairly progressive in a lot of areas. I think that this would be I would like to think they would view this as fair critique and commentary, and that they would, be willing to engage and interact with that.
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is that the 12 people we love, well, women are included in that.
Because they're people! Shocker!
Like, for example, if I were to say, oh, by the way, people of color can be in your 12 people you love. Or, by the way, people of color were in Scripture.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everyone would look at me like I'm an idiot.
Because of course.
Because of course.
But that's one of the things. That's one of the reasons why it feels so exclusionary to me. Is I'm supposed to be loving 12 people. I'm supposed to be someone who is a disciple. And I feel deleted. I feel removed. I feel like this isn't meant for me anymore. That I'm not the audience. All right, so main points of the chapter then that you want to go over. Because again, pretty short. This is one of the longer chapters here, but pretty short.
Well, first off, talking about the awkwardness of loving your family. Now, the problem is that a lot of the chapter is spent stressing how awkward Jesus' relationship with his family was. And I'm like, okay, we got it. Jesus' family had a really interesting, and I would say strained relationship with him, especially once he started his ministry. From Mary asking Jesus to do a miracle
Yeah.
because he didn't want to look bad in front of the guests.
Yeah.
It wasn't even her party.
That's one of your favorite stories.
One of my favorite stories. Because I'm like, dude, Jesus, of all the, like, for your starting miracles, like...
It's because his mom asked him.
That's true.
It's because his mom asked him.
But then, going on to, like, when his brothers and his sisters are, like, and I think validly concerned that either A, their brother has lost his mind, or that he's going to say something that's going to either get him, and by extension possibly them in a world of trouble. I think that he makes a good point with this. I think that the ultimate point he's making is Jesus understands what it's like to have a fraught and strained relationship with your family. And something I want to mention here is because there are many people that we live life with and we love, and there are people that we do ministry with and for that might not have their biological families. Because there are a lot of biological families that are toxic and unhealthy. And there are some that, because of some element of who they are, or because of some event, or because of some tragedy, don't have that biological family.
I think that's very important.
And so what I love what Jesus stresses, and I think that he might mean it in a way differently than we've taken it when he says, "Who is my brother and my sisters and my mother? Those who do the will of God." And between you and me, I think that he's talking about found family. And that he's talking about this idea that, you know what, family does not necessarily mean blood. Family does not necessarily mean that you were born from the same genetic strain and you are tied by these genetic bonds. That family can be more than that and deeper than that. And I would argue that found family is incredibly special and important because you can't choose your biological family. That just happens. You choose, though, your found family. And I think that Christians should be the first ones, and we should be at the forefront of this idea of found family, and this idea that, so I'll even extend this. When he says family here, and he asks you for the 12 people you love to be family, don't think it has to be biological. Don't think it has to be genetic. And it could be a mentor of yours. It could be someone you're mentoring. It could just be some of your family friends or someone that's so close to you that they are family to you.
That friend that's more of a sibling.
Yeah, the ones that can has a key to your house and come whenever they want inside of your fridge. Because not all of us have our biological families for one reason or another. Some of my members might be at a certain point in their lives where a lot of their biological family has passed away, and that's a very real experience that we're dealing with here. And so don't think that this has to be biological. But I would argue that it's someone that you have a tie that strong with. And even then, even if it's found family, sometimes our relationship with them, and when we try to talk to them about serious religious things, isn't the easiest thing to do.
Right, and I think that's the main point here, beyond the whole biological family thing, is we're so used to seeing each other in certain ways, right? That seeing people out of that context, seeing a different part of them, can be difficult, or you don't believe that they have this other side of them, right? It's an interesting kind of dynamic to think about, that our family knows us in a certain way. The people that raised us, or the people that have known us since childhood, remember the way that we were as kids.
It's an interesting here. Like Jesus likes to say, a prophet is never accepted in their hometown.
Right.
And I still remember trying to do an internship in my home church, the one I grew up in, and I didn't realize how difficult that was going to be, because a lot of the members, like, they remembered when I was in cradle roll and when I was in Sabbath school. They remembered when one of the older ladies had to literally sit across the chair arms to keep me from getting up and bolting out of the Sabbath school room.
Because you would run into the parking lot. She told me that story every Sabbath that we were there.
And I loved it. I loved hearing the story. But at the same time, though, when pastor's coming over to talk to you about something, it's really hard when you remember when pastor was a kid and, running out of the parking lot with or without clothes out into the parking lot of church.
Right.
And yes, sometimes with clothes, sometimes without clothes. So I could imagine, if you will, thanks for mentioning that. Imagine, if you will, they have these memories and these stories where like they've literally wiped you when you were growing up, and then all of a sudden now you're trying to minister to them.
Yeah.
Like, that's incredibly difficult.
But that's true. You know, we get into these certain types of relationships with people, and trying to bring them into this other part of our lives, or to show them this deeper aspect of us. It can be really hard. It can be challenging, and it can be scary too.
And especially if you have friends or family members that you had more contact with before you accepted Jesus and before you began this journey of justification and sanctification, and you might be a different person now than you were then. Sometimes that makes it really hard and difficult too. And I like the fact that he's real with that, and he understands he understands that this is an obstacle, but it doesn't make the work any less important or any less necessary. And so that's the trick that you got to figure out is, all right, how do I build or rebuild these bridges to these people that I care about deeply, but now I've got to like strengthen this bridge to be strong enough that we, like, I don't know why I'm using the bridge, but the bridge over troubled water kind of thing, like, how can I make the bridge strong enough that because let's be real, a lot of times as families, we don't always have like really deep emotional conversations with them, honestly. Like, our siblings and stuff, sometimes we get incredibly shallow with our conversation and all that. And then when you try, it gets awkward. I still remember growing up on Christmas, my mom wanted us to sing Christmas carols on Christmas together, you know? And I always like I didn't want to do that because I felt weird singing with my sisters and that weird, right? But we have those things that build up over time. And so part of this whole exercise is, how do we build and strengthen bridges, and how do we get over some of those things that might be obstacles with us meaningfully reaching out to our family members?
Yeah. In the chapter, that's about it. We don't actually get. It's called "How Do I Love My Three Family Members," but we don't actually get a how. So it's essentially why.
It's a why.
It's a why.
It should be why. How is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, because we don't get a why. It just says you just do it, and then it works.
I think there's some practical things we can have you do here, though.
But I think the practical stuff, I believe, is coming in the back.
Like the backpack?
Yes.
The backpack. Should we just reference the backpack, or should we wait and talk about the backpack?
I think we should go through the rest of the content and then do all that together, because there's exercises that we'll do together.
Okay, sounds good.
And
so so these are chapters 5 and 6 that we just talked about, and talking about how do we get started. So maybe the best way to talk about these two chapters is, how do we start? And how do we kind of get the ball rolling? And then next week we'll be getting together and we'll be talking about
the next two. So how do I love my 3 closest friends, and how do I love
my 3 church members?
My 3 church members. They're also more whys than hows, but we're going to get to the hows.
Yep. And so what we want to do is go through the application guide with you, but I think we also want to throw in some things from our own experiences and our own kind of study and research on this, because we're also looking at some other sources and whatnot too to kind of come along with this. Like a good source that Cass used recently when she preached was Chapman's book about forgiveness and apology.
Yes.
And so we can bring in some of these other sources and whatnot also, because I think one of the most important things is, if there's a plan, that it's easy to follow the plan. And so we'll work with the application guide. Hopefully we'll have some more information. Maybe we'll have some more to contribute to that as well. And so thank you guys for joining in with us today and continuing this conversation. Please, questions, comments. Underneath.
Give us some interaction. Let us know you're here.
Yeah, either on YouTube or on Facebook or on the Instagram, like wherever it might be, because I think we're gonna have it in all 3 places. Also, a couple things before we're done here. Remember that this week is Passion Week. And so this week we're going to be heading into Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday,